We're here at the Balboa Island Museum with Mary Hardesty, Clayton. It's April 21st. My first question is, what is your earliest memory of the island?
I was 16 years old and I lived in Oceanside, California. My brothers were surfers and they heard about the Wedge, which is a famous body surfing place in Newport Beach. So they said, we're going to get in our car and go check it out. So I begged to come along, and so I came along. And interestingly enough, they took the route onto the island and waited in the ferry line. And we were driving onto the island and I looked around and I said, I feel like I'm in Disneyland. I cannot believe there's even a place like this. And then we get down the ferry line and we're waiting in the ferry right in front of this building. And I thought, oh, I could never live in a great place like this. I just thought this was just be too good to be true. Well, a couple of years later, I met somebody who lived on Balboa Island, married him, and here I was, right at this building.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So that was my first memory, and I just thought of it as just the most whimsical place I'd ever seen in my life.
Is this the first picture of you visiting here?
And, yes. So this is actually, I wasn't 16 in this picture. This is when I actually moved here.
Okay.
I was 19.
Okay. So our next question is, when did you move here? So
1969.
1969. Okay.
October 26th, 1969.
Wow. And what were you feeling in this particular picture?
Well,
what were your
it was so
feelings?
funny because I got down and I sat feeling the sand. It's like somebody who'd been out to sea or something and landed and touched the ground for the first time. I was just feeling like, I can't believe I'm here and I'm living here.
Wow. Why did you move here? So next question.
I got married and my husband lived here and was a realtor on Balboa Island at the corner of Park and Agate, where the current Park Avenue Cafe is.
Mm-hmm. What was it like at that time?
You know, it was very down home. I think the biggest difference is that 25% of the people were year-round people. I was one of 25%. 75% were students, you know, that kind of came and went the 9-month period, and summer rentals. But there are very few people that lived here year-round. So when summer came, it was just tourists everywhere. I mean, like every other house, you know. So your permanent neighbors were, you know, not so close. The people that was really here for full time.
So you think that shaped part of the community life, perhaps, just with the vacation tone?
It did. It made it. There's definitely a whole nother season. Like, you know, other parts of the country have seasons with, you know, the weather and the climate, but here it was the people. Just all the energy and excitement of people coming to summer vacation, you know, when it hit. And by the time they were all leaving at Labor Day, we were all ready that we were full-time people because, you know, it was fun while it lasted, but it got pretty crazy.
Do you self-identify as an islander? I've heard that term used
Balboa
for
Island,
those
yes.
when you feel that connection. And so would you attribute part of that experience that you've embraced it since you've arrived here as a permanent resident? And is that part of you?
Yes, you know, since I spent most of my childhood by the ocean, in Oceanside, my dad was a military man, we did travel around the country a bit, but I relate to the ocean. But coming to Balboa Island was really a whole different experience. It was just a very small town feel of a community and very nautical, and just resonate with red, white, and blue and anchors, and, you know. Yeah. And hearing the clanks, you know, of the buoys and the seals at night, and it's just a really sense of being in a, you know, seafaring community.
Would you share why Balboa Island holds such a special place in your heart?
Well, for many reasons. I've been here, you know, for 45 years. So it feels like home. It feels like more home than any place, you know, I've ever been before that. I had 3 children, 3 beautiful children that were born and raised here locally. They came home from the hospital. They were all born in Hogue and came home, and I raised them on Balboa Island, you know, until they were full grown and gone. And also I had a granddaughter who was actually born at home on Balboa Island on Pearl Avenue, and her name is Tanya Hardesty. She's now married and living in Sedona. But that was very exciting. And in the same year, there were some really good friends of ours, the Hamiltons, who also had a daughter born at home on Pearl in the 200 block.
Were your children a part of the BIYC at times?
You know, at times they were at the BIYC, but most importantly, both my boys were ferry boat collectors first at 16, and both of them went on to get a captain's license and become captains of the ferry. And there's a whole group of boys and young men that were their friends that are still like, they feel like my children today. Marcy Cook's sons were two of them. And it was just a wonderful community, and it was fun. They'd get the night shift, and I'd take ferry rides back and forth, and bring them food. And my daughter was a collector for a while on the ferry.
Would you have a favorite Balboa Island story that brings back fond memories of your childhood or that inner child within you?
Well, I think some of my fondest memories were when my children were young, and we had a little skipjack boat that had a flying bridge, it's a motorboat, that we used to take to Catalina. So we'd get up early on Balboa Island and go down to Dad's Donuts and stock up on the donuts for the day, and the kids would all be excited, and we'd go in the golf cart. And then we'd pack up onto the boat, and just as it's getting really light out, we'd head out to sea. And the first thing you see as you go out is the bellbuoy with all the seals on it, and then you head out, and as you head out towards Catalina, maybe we weren't going all the way to Catalina, we might have been just fishing for the day. You look back fondly on, Balboa Island, your home, and then at the end of the day, or in a couple days, you end up coming back into, back into the port, to the harbor, and back to home, and it just, and just the smell of the ocean, and all the excitement, and passing people on their boats, and neighbors saying, "Hi, how's the fishing?" And part of that big excitement, and I still have the great picture, is when we finally, after 8 years, caught the marlin that we were chasing between here and Catalina. Not very many people really catch marlins between here and Catalina. And finally, after 8 years and 3 boats and thousands of dollars of boating costs and gas and everything else, and all 3 children were on the boat at that time, so we have this fabulous picture.
How much did it weigh in at?
167 pounds. And it was on the front of this house on Pearl Avenue where I was a Pearl girl, and we had the parade. It was just mounted on the outside of the house. So I would say that was a very exciting highlight.
Wow. How did Balboa Island become a home to you?
Well, I think that when you start having children, you start creating more of a home and have a sense of community, and taking your babies out, in the strollers, and people saying, "Well, let me see the baby," and actually getting to know more people that way. And it just becomes your home. And then you start, into the school system, and you get to know the parents, and there's this whole group of children from Balboa Island. The first elementary school was Corona del Mar Elementary, and they all went there, and they got on the bus, and so it just creates community as your children grow and become involved in BIYC, or school, or sports. The fishing club, they had a fishing club out of JD's Fish and Tackle. So when summer came, they'd all, be out there catching fish, including my daughter, and they'd get trophies, and it was very exciting.
That's great. So, would you have a special holiday memory that relates to Balboa Island?
Well, okay, so I think the 4th of July is one of my favorites, and we remodeled a house on Pearl Avenue, and I had a good friend who was quite the sailor yachtsman, and a couple days before the 4th of July, he says, "You really need a flagpole out here, and I can make it. I've got an old ship's mast, and we could just create this fabulous flagpole, and then just invite all your neighbors, and don't tell them." And he said, "I could put it on the special hinge, and we'll just put it up in the dark the night before the 4th, and just tell everybody to come to the flag raising, and then we'll get it up there." And that's how the 4th of July flag raising started. And my children were all young. I'd say they were all at that time 8 years old and under.
What year was this approximately?
1981.
Okay. So you can say you had a direct connection to this tradition of flag raising.
Yes, and so what we did the first year was we had any of the kids that had talent, and even Tina's daughter came, and her niece, I think, too, and they performed. We had a talent show and flag raising.
Every year.
Every year, and then and we had such a wonderful block because they were people of all ages, grandparent age, parent age, young people in college, and so it was really fun, all ages. And then I had a trombone, and so I led the parade. And so after we were done with the flag raising and the talent show, then it was time for the parade. And so I had a boom bass, which is something that you tap, and like a drum and cymbals all in one. And so we had Cindy, my friend Cindy Cupper, she did that. My other friend Annie did it some of the years. And then Bill Hardesty, my former husband, would get out the bugle, and he would do the bugle as they raised the flag. And then we had other people come as the years kind of went on, other talented grandchildren or something that could play saxophone or the bugle or something, and they would join in the talent show and maybe do the flag raising music.
So you're a part of the Pearl Girls that Joyce Harris is also a part of. Would you share some of the songs that you came up with?
Well, the favorite song that we came up with the night before the very first flag raising, we had a tenant in the back who was a singer, songwriter, fun guy named Dave Peoples. And so we said, we need to come up with a song. Okay, well, one of the gals helping us was a soprano, which I'm not. Anyway, so they came up with the song, What Do We Do on Pearl Avenue, or the Pearl Avenue theme song. I'm not going to try to sing it for you. They've changed it because most people couldn't hit most of the notes. However, just for the record, I like the original. But basically it's what do we do on Pearl Avenue? Well, we don't get blue on Pearl Avenue. We're friends, we're kin, not necessarily thin, but we pull our own weight on Pearl Avenue. And it kind of, they talk about the planes going over, and it was very conducive.
What do we do on Pearl Avenue?
Yes.
We're up with the planes on Pearl Avenue.
Nothing gets us down on the best street in town. It goes way up.
That's right.
On Pearl Avenue. Okay, then the first year we had a flag made, or maybe it was the second year, that depicted a lot of the characters on Balboa Island. It's blue, and it had the street sign that said Pearl Avenue. It had this old beat up truck that my stepdaughter who lived in the back had, her husband was always pulling trucks apart on the street. So they had this old beat up truck, and then we had people complaining about the parking. We had somebody that they was called the parking pig, lovingly, the parking pig, because he had his car and all his kids' cars, and so there was a pig on the flag, and you know, and there was the marlin that we caught hanging, because everybody thought, on the front of your house, really? You know. So we had this great Pearl Avenue flag, which is still floating around.
Does anyone still have it then? So
Yes,
it's
yes.
still used and.
Well, they don't, they hang it up somewhere when we have the flag raising, but it doesn't go up with the American flag like it used to.
I see. Would you share some of your favorite stories about any celebrities you might have encountered here?
Well, I used to run into Buddy Epson all the time in the market by the ferry. And he would just stroll in, saunter in like anybody else, and hey, how you doing everybody, you know. And just buy whatever he's buying for milk or whatever, you know. And so he was a fun guy and really part of the community. And
Would you share about any life-changing events that have occurred to you at the island?
life-changing events. Well, on the fun stories, while I'm thinking about that, okay, so I had a friend named Mabel, and she died at 94, and she lived on Agate Avenue in the 200 block. And I used to take her out on Sundays to her spiritual center that she went to, and every time we would come back, she'd look out, and she'd look over one side of the bridge and over the other, coming onto the island, and she'd say, if heaven's not like this, I don't want to go.
Oh.
And the wonderful story about her is that she lived on a little cottage that was built over a weekend by her husband and his friends, like just a beach cottage, really, she said literally built in a weekend. And next door they had a sand lot. And it was just one house, little cottage on two lots. They paid $200 for the first lot and $250 for the second lot. And the reason they bought the second lot is because as they were building, she stood in the kitchen, looked out the window, and then she saw people walking by, checking out the lot next door to buy. And she goes, I couldn't live that close to my neighbors. So they bought the second lot for $250. So she always used to tell me, what would it feel like to be a millionaire? And I'd say, Mabel, you are a millionaire. I mean, her lots were pretty valuable at that time. So she's one of my favorite island people. She loved Balboa Island so much. And her husband didn't want to live here full time, so she had to wait till he died to move here. So she didn't get to move here full time until she's probably 80.
How have a lot of your connections been made with all the friendships and the community groups that you've created? So do you know when that all evolved, or where? Is there a particular reason, if you're neighbors, or you frequent restaurants, or how did that
Well,
happen?
restaurants for sure, because I'm a restaurant. I like to go to restaurants, and I love to start my day out at a breakfast place. I get up and out, and I'm still working full time, so I like to get up and out, kind of plan my day and socialize. And there's some of the same people, and we're all pretty sad now because Park Avenue Cafe is temporarily shut down, and so that whole community of people, we run into other different restaurants thinking, when is it ever going to reopen, you know? So there's a whole community around the Park Avenue Cafe. There's another wonderful community at Wilma's that I just love, the waiters, and they've been there so long, and they're also friendly and loving, and so there's that. And then certain stores, like our gang, the toy stores helped me for years with my own kids and now with grandkids as far as gifts and things. And the Sandpiper, you know, that dates way back, a wonderful ladies. Before it was a variety store with people that, you know, weren't as people friendly as the next group, that was the Sandpiper. And then, and of course, Gail, who had it last, we're also sad when she left. Because we really do need a variety store of some sort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to say, and then there's the whole fairy culture, and especially when my boys were working there, and just this wonderful group of people that socialize after the fact. And Babel Island's so wonderful because even if you're not like best of friends and go dine at people's houses, you're really interacting with them all week long in the community. And it doesn't necessarily take spending a whole lot of time with somebody. It's just seeing them every day and saying, hi, how are you doing? How are the kids, you know? When I was raising my children, it's such a nice community that if somebody noticed they weren't doing what they should have been doing, they'd let us know. And some of the things are important, like he didn't look both ways when he crosses the street. You know, so that you felt like people looking out for each other. When you have elderly people on the street, people notice if they don't come out of their house, you know. So it's really, because we're close and intimate, and some people said they could never live this close, but once you come here and you acclimate to that, it's really wonderful. I've never felt unsafe on Babel Island, and I felt unsafe in many other places I've lived, you know, or
Really,
visited.
sure. It really seems like there's a family culture that's developed through the celebrations and just the generations of interacting. It's really neat.
Not to mention staying in shape and walking around both islands. There's a whole,
Right.
and if you go out a certain time of day, you're going to see certain people and you know it, and other times of the day. You know.
What is your reaction going over the bridge? Do you have an expression that, or a feeling that really?
Sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm home. Because once you're here, you usually walk or golf cart or, you know, you can really just park your car and not have to get back into it. To dine, I mean, my husband and I even walked up the Newport Center to the movies. That's really not that far.
No.
Or taking the ferry over to go to the beach, and I'm an ocean swimmer, and
No. Do you have a favorite story about a business on Marine Avenue, even if it doesn't exist today? I know you just mentioned a few, but is there a particular story that you'd like to share?
that's a difficult one. I guess if there's any store, I think, you know, we were talking about the variety store, the Sandpiper. I love there was an elderly couple that had it, and I think they called it the variety store. And then these two wonderful gals came in that lived on Emerald Avenue, and my son was their paper boy. And so they started this store, and it's just that kind of store that you go in if you needed thread. You go in and if you needed just oddball items like tags or gift wrap or, you know, stencils for things. I mean, just the variety things. And you always ran into just people doing things like that. Just your everyday folks were always at that store. So I just loved it, and I loved the women there. And, you know, coincidence would have it, when I was 4 years old, I lived in this little tiny town, population 50, named Coleville. And I've never talked to anybody who knows what it is or where it is. And one day, I heard Betty at the Sandpiper say, Coleville. And I turned around and I said, what? And I talked to Betty for years. Her son lived in Coleville and was raising his kids there. So it's just it's one of those places you just hang around and talk and hear things, and I just love that store. It was just
Loved it.
yeah,
It was a great store.
back to basics, down home, and just regular folks would be in there, and just all kinds of interesting conversations, would happen there. So I'd say that. And then my other favorite one is Jolly Roger, which is now Willis. My kids used to go there for Buccaneer malts and, put on their pirate hats, the paper menu hats, that were pirate hats. And we have so many fun memories of that. Christmas pictures there.
That's wonderful. Would you have any other particular stories you'd like to share with us? This kind of concludes this portion of our preset questions.
Okay.
Is there any element that perhaps with your business here or any personal stories you'd like to include?
Well, I think that because it's very down home and that people are very just open and friendly, when I'd had my real estate license for some years, I got it in 1971, I didn't use it full-time right away as I was raising young children. But because of the community, it's a wonderful place to work because I love the island, I love the houses, I love the people, and it's just everyday conversation. So it's a natural way of doing a job and providing a service of something that you really love and getting to really experience the history of the island. I mean, some of the houses are newer and they've been torn down or they're brand new, but I've been in so many fabulous older homes and all the special artifacts, and I mean, I have old anchors that came off houses that they were tearing down, and just, fun things that really take you back in time. And there's such a connection of people. So like I've met people's granddaughters or people that inherited family homes or something, and some of them are able to keep them, but some of them need to pass them on to somebody else. So it's been just my pleasure just being a part of the fabric of Balboa Island and doing a business that comes natural to me. And because it's all here, then when my kids came home from school or that, it was just easy to find me, and it was just all part of life. It's almost like Andy of Mayberry or something, that sense, if you know who Andy of Mayberry is.
Absolutely, yeah. That's wonderful. It's neat that you're able to blend your love of the island and be able to connect other people and create a new generation as they're thriving and the transition there. So appreciate your contribution here. It's a pleasure
You're welcome.
meeting you.
And I'd like to share, this is my old house.
Yes, please do.
And it was built in 1940. And when I was 19 years old, I was walking, all around the neighborhoods, getting to know Balboa Island, and saw this house, and I went, oh my gosh, I would love to have this. I just can't imagine having a cute little house like this. So it wasn't until my 50s that it came up for sale, and I was able to purchase it. And we did our best to really keep it as original as we could. And a fun story is there was a woman who lived in this house named Mrs. Scott, and she lived here for 40 years, I think it was.
Wow.
And she raised 3 boys in it. And you'd have to see it to appreciate it. But there were 2. One bedroom was average size, and another one was very small. And then there was the master bedroom, but it didn't have a bath at the time. It does now. And she raised them there for 40 years. But my son, when he was a paper boy age, and her kids were grown and gone, he used to go to her kitchen window, which is my now kitchen window, and if they were nice and said please and hello Mrs. Scott, she would hand them candy out the window. So when I told him what house I was buying, he says, oh, I know that house. Yeah.
He's approving it.
Yes.
From his
So this son is now 43 and just had his first child, and his name is Quinn, and so it's been fun taking him around the neighborhood and showing him to different people and neighbors, and that still remember him as a paper boy. There's still people out there.
Sure.
And then my other 2 children. I mean, my son has stayed local and he has 4 children. They all love to come to Balboa Island, just go to Grandma's house, and then go to the Emerald Street Beach, and so it's really a lot.
You said your daughter worked on the ferry. Wasn't she the first girl? I think she was. It was Cindy Beek. I think your daughter was the first female to work on the ferry.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I'm almost positive.
Do you think so?
I think
it was a
she broke-
short-lived career. I know it didn't work with her
Yeah,
time.
but she broke the sex barrier because it was always
Goodness.
boys. And I'm positive, because I remember it being kind of a to-do at the time.
Wow.
She was the first girl.
Well,
because
then
it
she
was
got a job at
always
the
boys.
Penguin Yogurt shop across the way, and she'd take the ferry over there. She liked that job, I think. Boys always like the job because they meet the girls coming
Oh,
to and
yeah.
from.
Oh,
Sure.
yes, it's the
What year
great.
did your daughter do that? I'm
Well,
wondering the
you know,
significance historically.
Okay, so
what
let's see, she was born
happening.
in 1974,
Mhm.
and she would have had to have been 16.
Mhm.
Okay, let's do the math.
Okay.
84, 84, and 16, 94, 2000, no, not 2000,
1990?
90.
90, I think.
Okay,
1990.
but so, it's so funny, because I think I would have remembered her being the first girl, because I really don't.
Ask her someday.
Okay.
That's interesting.
yeah.
Ask her
Yeah.
someday, because I remember us living on the island saying, that's the first girl that's ever worked on the ferry. And there was a kind of.
Oh, I know who was before her, there was actually Pam. Do you remember Pam, whose brothers worked on the ferry?
No.
Tommy still works at the boathouse on the ferry.
Huh.
And she had really curly blonde hair, and she was a collector, and she became a driver. I think she might have been the first woman driver.
Okay.
Pam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And her father, their father, or was it their uncle, was one of the first head captains for the ferry that would run the whole operation.
Wow.
Yeah, that worked under Mr. Beek.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do you know, girls, one night somebody took the ferry and they went to the back bay? Do you remember that story? The guys that were working the ferry, it's supposed to go till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Uh-huh.
That collects anybody that's over when a bar closes or whatever.
Right.
And there was no one and no one and no one, and they were bored, silly, and they took the ferry and took it into the back bay. And a police officer came, and he needed to get across.
No!
He was like, "Tick, tick, 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 tick," and he
Oh,
ratted them out to
nice.
Beak. They got in so much trouble.
Oh, I bet they
Well,
did.
nice to do that.
Oh, that's funny.
Thank you again. We really appreciate this.
Thank you. Okay, so one thing I'd forgotten to share about my home here at 203 Emerald is that it was built in 1940 by a Hollywood producer from the Paramount Studios, we understand, and by a set designer. And they built it 3/4 scale, because that's kind of how they did sets and that. So it's a very cute house, and it's plenty livable and enough space to move around in, but 3/4 scale. And at the time of this 1940s era, Mutiny on the Bounty and some of the very nautical movies were popular and famous. And so it's got corbels and things that remind you of a ship inside the house. And so that made it really fun. And now this is hearsay, that this Hollywood producer built it for a starlet girlfriend, and her name was Deanna Durbin, who's a very famous movie star who became one of the most famous female stars of the time, and retired at 27 because she really wasn't that fond of the movie industry, and she moved to France, where she recently passed away. Now, I don't have proof that she really lived here, but that's the story we've been told.
Fascinating. Thank you.
That's a story.
Yeah.